This offseason, the Commanders made the kind of aggressive moves required to take over a division, while their rivals appeared content with the status quo. That and more right now on Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Commanders. I am David Harrison, your guy on the ground covering the Washington Commanders. Not only am I doing that with you here 5 days a week, but I'm also covering the Commanders locally for WUSA9.com, as well as for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com. I want to thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen or view today. And whether you're an everydayer or you're just checking us out, I appreciate you. To those everydayers who come through for every single show, a special thank you goes out to you. And if you haven't already, anybody out there, if you haven't subscribed for free on YouTube or wherever you're listening to today's show, please do so at this time. We got over 14,500 subs yesterday between the last episode and this episode, so greatly appreciate all the new subscribers. Of course, greatly appreciate all of the 14,000 plus subscribers who already subscribed to the channel before that. And if it's your first time watching the show or listening to the show, happy that you found us. Hopefully you like what you hear and you come back again very, very soon. Coming up on today's episode, we've got key adjustments and rookies to watch. But first, I'm going to tell you why the Washington Commanders won the NFC East arms race this offseason. All of that is coming up on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Philadelphia Eagles, on paper, got worse. The Dallas Cowboys treaded water, and the New York Giants are still at least a year away, which is why the Washington Commanders undoubtedly, in my mind, won the NFC East offseason. The entire NFC East had a good offseason in different kinds of ways, but the Washington Commanders had the best. And no, it's not just because I cover the team. It's objective. I looked at all the data. I looked at all the additions and the losses. So I'm going to explain it here. And this is coming from Joy. We're going to kind of continue our mailbag. We got so many really great questions. It's really going to help shape our content leading all the way into training camp. Our first training camp practice episode will come Wednesday afternoon into the evening once practice is done. So that's coming up next week, and we're going to continue to fill this in before we get to practice. We got Adam Peters and Dan Quinn press conference coming up before then, so we got a lot of stuff to talk about. But Joy came through. Actually, a couple of questions from Joy here in this one, asking a lot of kind of schematic, strategic type of questions, kind of stuff that I just love to dig into. Joy asked about the NFC East arms race this offseason and whether or not the Washington Commanders did enough to catch up to the Philadelphia Eagles and to stay in front of the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Giants. So let's start with the New York Giants, the bottom of the division. Their story this offseason, aggressive defensive rebuilding in certain areas, right? A lot of the main pieces, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, guys like that are still around, right? But certainly some rebuilding happening there and a generally full offensive reset. So their biggest moves this offseason, they spent big time on the secondary. They went out and got cornerback Paulson and Deebo. They got Javon Holland, a free agent safety. Premium draft picks were spent on Abdul Carter, defensive end, and a new franchise quarterback of the future, Jackson Dart. They also moved on from Daniel Jones as far as looking at their losses. So the Daniel Jones era, or error, if you want to call it, like losing Saquon and keeping Daniel Jones, not great. That's over. Darren Waller, the tight end that came over from the Raiders at one point, I think he had a pretty good start, if memory serves correct, but obviously it didn't eventually work out. He's getting traded or has been traded to the Miami Dolphins, and he'll try to resume his career there. So looking at how the Giants stack up against the Commanders now, especially this offseason, the Giants, they made some big moves, right? Russell Wilson also coming in at quarterback, but they're trying to close the gap on a Washington team that was already better than them on paper, better than them on the field, with major questions still on the Giants offensive line and at wide receiver behind Malik Neighbors. It's debatable if they've done enough to keep Washington from pulling even further away. That takes us to the Dallas Cowboys, third place team in the NFC East in 2024. Their story was kind of a youth movement, but a youth movement under duress, because we've seen Jerry Jones not really want to kind of take that approach, but he kind of had to take that approach, or the Joneses kind of had to take that approach. Their big moves this offseason, as far as gains, low cost, high upside, that was their strategy, right? George Pickens, Tyler Booker. They took flyers on reclamation projects like linebacker Kenneth Murray, cornerback Kaiir Elam. So a lot of low cost, high upside strategies going on with their additions, but they lost some very important players, including franchise defensive lineman, defensive end DeMarcus Lawrence, who went to Seattle and then basically said, hey, nobody ever going to win a Super Bowl with the Dallas Cowboys. Micah Parsons didn't like that too much, but hey, DeMarcus is only out there telling the truth, right? Looking at them compared to the Commanders, Dallas arguably got weaker in terms of proven top end talent. I know like everybody's looking at George Pickens, right? But they lost some very, very key players and they got younger in a lot of very, very important situations. So for a team that was already behind Washington, this was not the offseason that they needed to kind of close that gap. Washington was aggressive, and I think they widened the gap between the two teams. I don't know how significant. I mean, don't forget the Dallas Cowboys, and this is divisions and all this other stuff. The Dallas Cowboys did beat the Washington Commanders once with a backup quarterback, nearly beat them again with another backup quarterback. So, any given Sunday, all that stuff. The Philadelphia Eagles, the great defensive exodus. That's kind of how I'm titling their offseason, right? Their big moves, they gained a whole bunch of kind of bargain bin rotational players, right? Some good names, certainly some potential. We'll see what the scheme can do, especially Vic Fangio. Like his genius is really going to kind of be put to the test here this season. But they lost a lot of players. Defensive linemen, Josh Sweat, Milton Williams. They traded Bryce Huff away. They got rid of Darius Slade. James Bradbury is gone. And look, I know some of these guys, especially in the secondary, like they have good young Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, all that stuff. So they certainly have some good young replacements already in place. But that veteran presence, it's important. You need veterans in the room. So they're going to lean on a lot of young guys on that defense. We're going to see how that really impacts them here. This is a key battle, obviously. The division champions are trying to repeat as division champions for the first time since Jesus was playing football. The Eagles were forced to shed a lot of talent, and the Washington Commanders aggressively went to add talent and address their weaknesses, right? So the on-paper talent gap at the top of the division, I think, has shrunk significantly. I don't know if I would say the Commanders have surpassed the Eagles on paper. I don't think I would go there, but I think certainly the race is a little bit closer. So for the Washington Commanders, and my final verdict for this NFC East arms race, I think the Commanders' aggressive offensive transformation, right? And the offense already took on a great transformation last year. But now this year, you look at what they've done. In addition to it, they made the painful choice to move on from Jonathan Allen, but it was a necessary one that we all kind of already saw coming. And then they made two blockbuster trades, brought in Laramie Tunsil, brought in Deebo Samuel. They added a champion on the defensive side here just this last weekend, actually officially not added yet, but soon will be. Von Miller coming in. And the conclusion here, I mean, you have other free agents, Dietrich Wise. We're going to talk about how they address some of their weaknesses here in the next segment, but I think they made up ground on the Philadelphia Eagles. And if you made up ground on the number one team in the division, then you, I think, have won that offseason. I think they created a little bit of separation as well between them and the Dallas Cowboys and them and the New York Giants. So I think that's significant. So to me, the Commanders won the NFC East offseason as they established themselves as the number one, as the number two team on paper coming into the season. They made the most aggressive moves and they targeted moves that really push their weaknesses to the forefront of their mind as far as trying to address them and turn them at least into non-weaknesses if they can't turn them into strengths. So while the Commanders clearly won the offseason arms race, the real question is if those replacement players or new players are enough to counter the league's now year-old book on how to attack the Washington Commanders' biggest weaknesses that were exposed in 2024. That and more is coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode of Locked On Commanders is brought to you by Monarch Money. Have you ever wished that managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. It's like having your own personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances, just like a great front office takes control of its team and its team's finances. Monarch Money is a complete financial command center. It lets you track everything in one place. And when you see it all laid out, the data just doesn't lie. Just like we analyzed how the Commanders' run defense became vulnerable without its anchor, I was shocked when I looked at some of my own spending habits. My wife wasn't, but I was. Monarch showed me how a few small purchases in my subscriptions category added up to a budget blowout by the end of the month, and it gave me the clarity to see my financial weak spot so I can make an aggressive move to fix it. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. The Commanders front office clearly identified its two biggest flaws from last season and aggressively acquired the specific players needed to turn those weaknesses into strengths. At least that's the hope and the idea, at least prevent them from being weaknesses, right? The Commanders saw how other teams most effectively attacked them throughout the season, in the postseason, and they went out this offseason looking to solve those problems. Again, another question from Joy asking how I think the other teams that are going against the Commanders are going to adjust based on what they saw last year. And how do I think they're going to adjust, and how are the Commanders going to counter those adjustments? So again, a lot of projection, a lot of this is kind of what I see, what I would do, and what I think the Commanders will do. It's a generalization, right? You can't necessarily copy paste what I'm about to say to every single opponent and say, boom, it's just going to work. And the Commanders are going to go 17-0 and sprint to the Super Bowl, right? But if you look at the 2024 blueprint, it was kind of a tale of two quarterbacks. And this is not unique to just Jayden Daniels, right? But last year, defenses discovered that there was a clear split in Jayden Daniels' performances when facing clean pockets versus pressure pockets. And again, pressure against quarterbacks being significant, not a new process. But when you look at Jayden Daniels, when he had a clean pocket, he was an elite quarterback. 105.7 quarterback rating, 20 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions. So you want to know why they went and traded for Laramie Tunsil? There you go. Give him a clean pocket, and you got an elite quarterback, MVP type of production on your hands. When he's pressured, just like most quarterbacks, the production goes down. But how far does it go down? It goes down to a staggering 81.4 quarterback rate. That is a big, big drop. His completion percentage dropped a massive 25 points, and he was sacked 51 times when facing pressure. So you want to know why teams like the Philadelphia Eagles had success and all those types of things? That's part of it. Obviously, it's not the only thing, but it's part of it. So the book is out on him, right? The key to beating the Commanders' offense is to generate pressure on Jayden Daniels at all costs. Get out there and create pressure. Tell your secondary, we might have to man you up against Deebo. We might have to man you up against Terry, but that's what you have to do. Now, how do you generate pressure? So the biggest moves that offseason made, trading for Laramie Tunsil, a simple 4-man rush that worked against this offensive line last year, probably not going to work this year. So what you can expect defenses to do is get a little bit more creative, get a little bit more aggressive. They're going to have to manufacture pressures more with more exotic blitzes, with more stunts, simulated pressures, right? Bring guys up to the line of scrimmage, drop them back, affect how the offensive line is going to protect, bring somebody through a gap that they're not expecting somebody to come in through, maybe gamble a little bit more, get a little bit bold, especially if it's like middle of third quarter, you're down 2 scores. You got to do something, turn the game around. You got to turn the tables, get out there and be brave. How can Washington counter this type of approach? Well, this entire season, they went out and planned for that exact thing. So again, Laramie Tunsil is going to come in, give Jayden Daniels better protection, right? Prevent the defenses from being able to get home. Like that is something the Philadelphia Eagles, we remember talking about Vic Fangio barely blitzing Jayden Daniels last season as a whole. And Brian Robinson Jr. not facing stacked boxes pretty much at all against Philadelphia Eagles. Get a better offensive line, get that upgrade, force those guys to bring more guys in the box, force them to blitz more guys, rush more guys. And it's kind of interesting, but if you want them to blitz, as long as you can handle it, right? That's the key. You have to give Jayden Daniels that clean pocket. It doesn't necessarily mean they can't blitz. It just means when they blitz, you got to be able to handle it. And that's the reason you go get Laramie Tunsil, but it's also the reason you go get Deebo Samuel, that short game ability, that short area quickness, quick slants, hitch, drags, all this other stuff, the ultimate blitz beater, those types of routes, those types of receivers. The Washington Commanders just simply didn't have a Deebo Samuel type receiver on the roster last year. I think Olamide Zaccheaus, Jamison Crowder were kind of the top, the 2 closest to that type of receiver, but neither of them can do that type of thing, play that type of game to the level that Deebo Samuel has in the past. So Deebo Samuel is part of that counterpunch from the Washington Commanders. The plan is going to get the ball out of Jayden Daniels' hand quickly on short routes and then let Deebo punish defenders for extra plays and all those things, force them into the box, create those one-on-one matchups outside, take advantage of them over the top when the timing is right. So that's part 2. That's kind of an offensive part of how I expect the Washington Commanders to see opposing defenses adjust to what they saw in 2024 and how the Washington Commanders have already gone out and tried to add some pieces this offseason to potentially counter those things coming up in 2025. Defensively, the Washington Commanders the offenses that the Washington Commanders face this year, they're going to test that defense, Dan Quinn, Joey Jr. defense. And it's weird because Dan Quinn's a defensive coach. He brought his defensive coordinator from Dallas, like Joey Jr. was in Dallas with him to be the defensive coordinator here in Washington. So most of the time you say, okay, defensive-minded head coach, we expect this team to be defensively sound, or in the offseason, they're going to go out and be incredibly aggressive on the defense. Like, he's a defensive coach. He's going to want defensive players. But this team is very much an offensive team. This is an offensive-minded team. This is a team that right now is built to beat you in a shootout. You just want to try to maintain the shootout as much as possible, minimize the shootout as much as possible. If ideally we're shooting, you're not. Like that's kind of the best type of shootout if you're on the winning side of it, right? But this defense is absolutely going to get tested here this season. They're going to look to exploit the inconsistencies that we saw when Jonathan Allen wasn't in the rotation in 2024, because clearly Jonathan Allen not going to be in the rotation at all in 2025. So last year, the Commanders' run defense was one about consistency and then volatility, and it all kind of seemed to hinge on Jonathan Allen. So Jonathan Allen, the top line numbers are deceiving. In the first 6 weeks with Jonathan Allen, got injured in that 6th game against the Baltimore Ravens, the defense allowed an average of 138 yards per game. In the 10 games without him, they averaged a nearly identical 136 yards rushing per game. But that doesn't tell the whole story, because if you look at those stats, and this is where stat scouting can get dangerous, if you just look at those numbers, you look and say, yeah, Jonathan Allen didn't really have that big of an impact one way or another. Glad he's gone. Have fun in Minnesota. All these things, right? But without Jonathan Allen, the defense became a boom or bust defense, especially against the run game. This is something we saw. We saw this team hold running backs to very low production, and then boom, all of a sudden, it's just the floodgates open. We saw games where this happened. Without Allen, the run defense became a roller coaster. They had some brilliant games, right? They held multiple teams under 100 rushing yards, but they were also completely blown off the ball in some big games. They gave up 202 yards rushing, 210 yards rushing in different games. They lost their anchor, and they became more vulnerable. It wasn't an every game situation, but basically it just became there's no middle ground. It's either you were really good, which usually tended to be against teams that just didn't run the ball very well, or you were really bad against teams that can run the ball really well. So the new game plan in 2025 from opponents, it's kind of obvious. Run the ball, right? Look to be that team that gets that boom week out of that Commanders run defense. If you've got strong physical offensive linemen, a strong running back, you're going to come in and you're going to try to get those 200-yard rushing games against this Washington Commanders defense. And you look at a team like the Dallas Cowboys, for example. They go out there and get Javonte Williams, a stronger running back. The New York Giants go out there and get Cam Scatterbo to join Tyrone Tracy, right? Stronger running backs. The Washington front office saw this, and they went out there and they let Jonathan Allen go. They bring in Javon Kinlaw. Is Javon going to be like a 1-for-1? No, but Javon Kinlaw can do multiple other things against these offensive fronts, kind of give you a little bit of flexibility. So, okay, this look isn't working. This combination of linemen isn't working. Let's shift things around, put a new set in there. I think that's kind of where this is going to go. So the goal isn't just for the run defense to be good, but to be consistent. On the edge, they got better against the run, at least historically. Dietrich Wise Jr., Jacob Martin better against the run as a stand-up outside linebacker or D-end than Dante Fowler is. So you get a little bit stronger out there on the edge as well. And then you're hoping that Daron Payne, a lot of that leadership and all that stuff behind closed doors turns into on-field production. And then, of course, Johnny Newton, second-year D tackle out of Illinois. If he can take another step, your D-line gets better there as well. So that's kind of the big thing from the defensive side. Ultimately, how teams adjust is going to come down to two battles, I think, on a week-in, week-out basis. Generally speaking, for the Commanders, the new look O-line and the weapons defeating the blitz, and the new look D-line stopping the run, forcing the ball into the quarterback's hands, not allowing opposing offenses to drain the clock when they have a lead or to rely on that run to extend drives. So the answer, again, to those two questions, I think will likely define a lot of moments in the 2025 season coming up. While the Commanders veterans are expected to solve last year's biggest problems almost immediately, the true ceiling to this 2025 Commanders team is going to be determined on how quickly the newly arrived rookie class can contribute and thrive. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The true success of the Commanders rookie class won't just be defined by immediate impact, but how they can impact the entire season, especially first-round linemen and second-round cornerback. The rookies reported on Friday for training camp, and from now to Tuesday, they're going to have a lot of time to get back up to speed, reacclimated to NFL life, get ready for the grind that is about to come. We've talked about this with coaches and people before. Rookies really get this whole thing kind of blasted at them multiple times. Rookie minicamp, you get your first taste of first taste of NFL practices. OTAs, you get it again. Mandatory minicamp, you get it again. Training camp, you get it again. It just kind of never stops. If you're a rookie in your first season. And if this team and this coaching staff can find a way to tap into the rookie talent like they did with Jayden Daniels, like they did with Mikey Sainristil, Johnny Newton in certain moments, Ben Sinnott when he got the opportunity. I know it wasn't a lot of opportunities, but when he got the opportunities, right? If you can find a way to let these rookies, one, contribute, but two, contribute all year long and kind of avoid that rookie wall, then they can be really, really valuable. So what's going on right now between Friday night while we're recording this and Wednesday, the first time we'll see them on the practice field. So for Josh Connerly, your first round offensive tackle, right tackle, the system and the conditioning is what it's all about right now. This is his professional orientation, essentially is the best way to put it. He's going to be in the classroom drilling every check, every call, every shift, every read with offensive line coach Bobby Johnson. Like he's just going to be going through it mentally. At the same time, he's going to be in the conditioning program, right? Getting his body ready for a marathon of an NFL season, especially in the trenches. Offensive lineman, you're just kind of getting run into, snap in, snap out. It's a massive jump in ability, massive jump in athleticism, massive jump in punishment from the college level. Every week, you're going up against NFL caliber linemen. In college, you might go up against NFL caliber linemen 5 times a season, right? Like I think that's probably the high end is 5 times a year. You're going up against NFL caliber talent this time. I mean, it's every single week, brother. So he's going to get mentally prepared for that, and they're going to start getting his body ready for it as well. Wednesday, when practice opens up, what are we going to be looking for? We're looking for that athleticism to stand out. Of course, we're looking for that technique. Again, do you look like a rookie in his first day of training camp, or do you look like an NFL player on the opening day of training camp? Those are two distinct differences. We're looking for the signs that the game isn't too fast for him, even on day one of training camp. And certainly some of the experience that he's already had is going to help him do that. Moving on to Trey Amos, second-round cornerback who thankfully finally signed his rookie deal just a couple days before, a few days before training camp starts, one day before he had to report for training camp. Cutting it a little bit close, but again, at the end of the day, as long as he's there, which he is, you're good to go. If you missed it, the Commanders setting out photos of Trey Amos signing his deal on social media on Friday. So what's happening for Trey Amos right now? Learning the system. That's a mental game. One of the reasons the cornerback is one of the hardest positions to transition from college to the NFL to is there's so many checks, reads. If he does this, I do this. If I do that, he does this. If we do this, I do this. All types of things, communications, crash downs, checkouts, like what else, every single word combination you can come up with in Joe Witt Jr.'s defensive scheme. He's learning the terminology, the coverage rules. How does the game differ from college to the NFL? For a rookie DB, getting the mental reps now is critical. So when practice starts, his body can react instead of having to think. The faster you can play, the better off you're going to be. The faster you can get to playing fast, the better off you're going to be. What are we going to watch for Wednesday? Hips and hands, right? That's kind of the two key things. One-on-ones against guys like Terry McLaurin, hopefully, maybe. Deebo Samuel, can he flip his hips without losing a step? You want to see a guy turn and run with the receiver and not break stride. Don't lose a millisecond of speed in your turnaround. Are you patient? Are you grabby? Are you desperate? Can you get the ball when it comes to you in a position where you can grab it, right? Things that he did really well in OTAs, things that he did fairly well in mandatory minicamp. Look, we all love Jayden, but you'd love to see Trey Amos get an interception off Jayden Daniels day one of training camp, right? Like it's hard in training camp because every time Jayden throws a touchdown pass, there's a Commanders defensive player that got beat. Every time a defensive player wins, there's a Commanders offensive player that got beat. So it's like, where do you root for? You just root for good plays, right? You want balanced training camp. Finally, Jalen Lane. We're not going to go through every single rookie here, but Jalen Lane, we'll go through the top 3. 4th-round wide receiver out of Virginia Tech. What's happening right now? Well, he's building relationships and he's showing these coaches a little bit more what he can do for the roster as they continue their roster evaluations. He's learning the playbook again, get a rapport with the offensive coaches, the other rookies. He needs to show that he's a professional, quick study. Hopefully he came from mandatory minicamp into training camp, ready to hit the ground running mentally. And the team is going to kind of this is an early indication, right? If he showed up unprepared, that's going to kind of tell you things. Because again, receivers, it's not enough to just know, all right, on this play, I'm running a post. On this play, I'm running a hitch. On this play, I'm running a drag. I'm running a speed out, whatever it is. No, you have to know how your route influences the other routes, how those routes influence your routes, and why it's important for you to hit your landmark, be where you're supposed to be at the right time. Those are things that he's working on now. On Wednesday, details and, of course, hands, right? Wide receiver's first job is to catch the football. So when you get the opportunity to catch the football, you need to catch the football. I don't care if it's against air, against one-on-ones, in 7s and 11s, you need to catch the stinking ball and get into your routes at the right depth, right? Like, if you're breaking at 5 yards and Jayden is throwing a ball that clearly he's thinking you're going to break at 7, that's a problem. That's going to be a problem on third and 4 when I need you to run a 7-yard out and you're running a 5-yard. That's an issue, right? That's going to be a problem. So those are the types of things. Is he crisp? Again, does he look like a rookie receiver? Or does he look like a receiver on the first day of training camp? So some repeatable things because these are rookies. It's the first day, but it's kind of a little bit of a taste of what we're looking for at training camp. And that's going to do it for today's episode. Next time on Locked On Commanders, we're going to go back into the mailbag and we're going to answer a question about Cliff Kingsbury going full on air raid in 2025. We'll break down the biggest position battles in camp and we're going to debate which sophomore is ready for a true breakout season. In the meantime, if you've got questions or comments, you can text them directly to me by becoming a Locked On Commanders Insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. We spent the first segment arguing that the Commanders won the NFC East arms race, but how does the league view the core talent that they're building around? Brand new Locked On NFL Top 100, which just dropped on Wednesday's episode of Locked On Sports Today, gives us the answer. Find out where Jayden Daniels ranks among the league's elites after just one season and why Terry McLaurin's placement proves Washington has the offensive firepower to take over the division if they can get him on the field. Find Locked On Sports Today now on YouTube or wherever you're getting this podcast. To the everydayers, I see you every day. I appreciate you every day, and I thank you for coming through for today's episode. Until next time, stay safe, be kind to one another. We'll talk again real soon right here on Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.